Do you find that social media has made people more pessimistic versus optimistic?
Yeah. There's so many aspects of social media that are just not good for us. Like we were not made, humans were not made, our brains were not made to experience social media and the way in which we experience it. But it all boils down to like, how are you using it? And is it using you?
Welcome to Glowlab. We're going to have a lot of fun and learn a lot together. I've always been a natural optimist. I feel like this has helped me in my career and in my life, but I also realize not everyone is like that. So in today's episode, I decided to bring on Dr. Deepika Chopra. She's known as the Optimism Doctor. She holds a doctorate in clinical psychology, and she really works with everyone, even if you are a natural pessimist, to implement techniques that actually make sense and that are easy to use in your life. So in this episode, you're going to get some of her tips, and I feel like you're going to walk away feeling like you want to be more optimistic. You are known as an optimism doctor. What does optimism mean to you? And actually explain to people what that means and what you do.
Basically, I did not get to this place or doing what I'm doing in any sort of linear fashion. I think a lot of us don't. I started off at working at a punk label, actually not too far from where we are now.
That's fun.
Which was really fun. I was in investment banking and I was in the health world, public health. And long story short, I found my way into psychology, and I've always been I love humans and I love human story, and I've always been so inspired by it. But I was literally the kid that when I first saw like Titanic, I could go to school for like 2 weeks. So I never imagined that I would be able to really sit with people's emotions. So like the idea of being in psychology was never really an option. It always intrigued me, but I was like, I could never do that because things like emotions and people's emotions, just like I can walk so easily into people's shoes that I feel like it's just not for me. But I was very wrong. It was perfectly for me. I ended up going back to school and I got my master's and then my doctorate in clinical health psychology. And while I was there very early on, I was just very intrigued and very I clung on to the neuroscience piece of it all. Like that was just much more, I'm a bit of a self-proclaimed brain nerd. I love the brain and I fell in love with the brain even more. And what I was learning about the brain at that time is that it is an anticipatory organ. So our brain is something that is constantly thinking in future tense. And so I was sort of getting this aha moment while I was working with clients and patients during my grad school time. Like we were focused so much on the past and sort of like past relationships, past behavior. And I sort of had this aha moment where I was like, I literally think that from everything I'm reading and all the research out there and everything I have access to right now, we are like overlooking something so big. And that is, what are we expecting to happen in future tense? Like something is going to occur a minute from now, 5 minutes from now, a month from now, a year from now, whatever you think is going to occur, what you expect to happen greatly influences your emotion. And that's how you feel, which then influences your behavior. That was the secret to me, was sort of this idea on how can I help people expect better and sort of expect more in line with what they really truly want. And that in essence was what led me to this idea and the notion of really focusing on optimism. And so it was pretty early on. I got my hands on every single bit of research that was ever done on optimism, and I became obsessed with it. And I started bringing it into my clinical practice. I brought it into my internships, my fellowship, and it just became like my niche, it was what I was into. And when I was out of grad school and I was seeing clients, I was doing things like so differently that it felt wrong to call it therapy. I just didn't feel like when people came to see me, I needed them to know that we were doing things differently. And so I called it self-worth work. And I would look at I would actually measure their optimism on different areas and aspects in their life. And I would have this 15-minute long spiel on how we're doing things differently. We are focusing more on your strengths and what you're naturally good at, and then the things that you really do want and what's going well. And so we can kind of, bring on more skills. And we still talk about the stuff that's bothering you, but it's a lot less. And so one of my clients, I'll never forget, he was just sort of so you're basically like my optimism doctor. And I was like, huh. if I would have just told you that to start with, would I have been able to give you back that 15 minutes of this session? And he was like, yeah. And I'm not great at being concise, as we can tell right now. So it sort of stuck. People started referring to me as the Optimism Doctor. It was exactly what I was doing. And I realized that it didn't exist, but I was doing it. So I needed to make it exist. That's the story of how I became the Optimism Doctor.
I love that so much. You know, you made me think of something. I tend to live in this world of optimism. And I actually think being optimistic instead of dwelling on things or being pessimistic, obviously being like, I'm the glass half full instead of empty kind of person. And I feel like that's really helped me in my career and the way I've managed things. But whenever I speak like this on social media, and it's kind of died down a little bit, but when I do speak like this with this positivity, people will sometimes say this feels like toxic positivity. What do you think of that concept?
Well, first I have to admit, I am known as the Optimism Doctor, and I know all the science behind it, and I'm really good at helping people increase their optimism. But I am not the most optimistic person. And probably in my like microcosm of family, I might be one of the more pessimistic ones. And so it takes work for me. And I think that is a really humbling experience. Like I am in the trenches, like with the people I work with. Like I am trying to develop my own tools to increase my optimism, because what we know about optimism, and I think that first of all, optimism is really, it is not truly understood for what it actually is. But what we know about optimism is people that are more optimistic or have more optimism in their lives, they do better in business. They have stronger communication, relationships. What we know about happiness, that's actually probably the best predictor, is your social interactions and relationships. They get sick less often. They bounce back from respiratory illnesses much quicker. They live longer. And not just live, like racking up the years, they're actually thriving. And so what we know about optimism is it's actually really good for you and beneficial, not just emotionally, but physically as well. But I do want to caveat that with optimism's not actually about being positive.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. And why is that? What's the difference?
Optimism is not toxic positivity. It's very different. So like, I think what most people imagine about optimism is sort of like someone is experiencing 24/7 bliss. They are always seeing silver linings. They are always feeling positive. It's kind of like that good vibes only, like that's all that sort of comes through. That's all that they're outputting. And we as humans were actually made to experience the full range of human emotion. That means we were meant to feel sad, mourning, loss, anger, excitement, joy, all of these things. Like we were meant, stress, worry, we were meant to actually experience all of this. And so all of these emotions are important and they are part of an optimism practice. Someone who is leaning more towards optimism is someone that is keenly aware and very mindful of the roadblocks, the setbacks, the less than ideal situations. They are not devoid of reality. In fact, they are very rooted in reality. But the caveat is, and the difference is, they see those things as temporary and something that they have the ability to overcome and persevere through, even if they don't know how or when, but they know that they can and they will. And so it's really based on resiliency. It's based on our own perseverance through our struggle. And so, you know, I think that the difference there is no one is immune to struggle. We will all struggle. But the key to that is in seeing it in a more optimistic light. And I will say that optimism is a muscle. It's something that we can all work on and build and be stronger with. You know, it's being able to see those things as temporary and rely on our past resiliency, the things we've already overcome.
What would be positivity then?
Toxic positivity?
Yeah, what would be toxic positivity?
Toxic positivity is literally it's like the negation of any feeling or emotion that is not positive. So it is like good vibes only, or it's, you know, and a lot of times I often like to share when we're sort of acting from a place of toxic positivity, whether it's something we're saying to ourselves or something we're saying to someone we really care about, almost always I think it's coming from a really good intention. It's coming from a good intention, but it's not the most beneficial or useful. And that's at best, at worst, it's very detrimental. And so it's sort of like when your friend comes to you and they're really upset and you say like, don't cry, you know, or it could be worse. that is a form of toxic positivity, which I think is coming from a good intention. You don't want to see your friend upset. You want to bring them out of it. And what we know about emotions is there is no sort of bringing someone out of it. Most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, when someone is coming to you, whether it's your child, your coworker, your partner, a friend, anyone that comes to you with a problem or a struggle or a feeling that they're having that is not so great feeling, and they come to you, almost always, we are looking to help fix it for them. But what they are coming for most always is just a space to be heard, a space to feel safe, and someone to listen. And so I think it's that obsession we have, and it's natural in us to want to fix something. We can really dive into that idea of toxic positivity.
That makes sense.
And so there are better ways and more real, optimistic ways to kind of counteract that and still offer support and care and help someone sit in their true, authentic feeling and show empathy and make sure they know that they're not alone and that they're safe, while at the same time, like, helping them remember and realize that they've got this.
Like online, the girlies, like the social media trend is to be like manifesting,
lucky girl
syndrome. Yeah. Be Delulu.
Yeah.
Do you believe in any of this?
I do. I really do, to an extent. I believe in it, but I also believe that there are some missing parts.
Okay.
And I, for a long time, have been basically, ever since I did my dissertation many, many years ago, I've been really focused on and researching this idea of evidence-based manifestation. And so I truly do believe in it. But I think the missing piece that I always talk about is it is important to know what you want and to really, people make vision boards and people tell you to like really imagine whatever that thing is that you want, like eat, sleep, breathe it. But the part, you can want something until the cows come home. But unless you expect that thing can happen and it is a possibility, it's probably not likely going to happen. And so the work with evidence-based manifestation, what I do is helping people figure out what they want, but also measuring how much do you actually expect that can happen for you. And if that gap is too big, then our work is to make that gap smaller. Your brain will only start turning on the executive functioning to start coming up with solutions to whatever it is that you want if it actually believes it's a possibility. Because our brain is a smart organ and we have a lot to do. The brain has a lot to do. It's not going to put forth energy to something that it doesn't actually think is a possibility. So yeah, if you want to be Delulu, which I think is all great, make sure you're being Delulu, but you're really being Delulu. Like you actually expect that this could happen. Not just like, I'm going to be Delulu and ask the universe for it, and I just expect that it will fall into my lap, even though if I really asked myself 1 to 10, how much do I really expect this is going to happen? And then all these other thoughts start coming up and it's like, probably not, because this relationship really sucked and that one sucked and this didn't work out. And, I'm asking for it, but I'm not sure I really believe it.
Right. You got to actually believe.
You have to actually believe it, and then you have to take the actions.
When a person comes to you to work with you, tell me the steps you kind of take them through. Some easy ones that can be maybe applicable to people watching at home or listening at home to becoming more optimistic.
Yeah. Well, it's literally why I made the card deck. Things Are Looking Up, which is right there. There's a kid's version and an adult version, but those are 52 different science-based prompts that actually increase your optimism. And what I love about them is they're not affirmation cards. That's a whole nother thing. The idea of affirmations. I write a lot about that in my book, and it's kind of not what you would expect.
Okay.
But you'll have to probably read the book for that. It's coming out. What I love about my work and what I'm passionate about is coming up with really tangible tools, everyday tools that anyone can do in a short period of time that is based in science. And we know so much more about the brain now. There's still a lot we don't know, but what we do know is that, we have these tools that actually work in congruence with how your brain chemistry works. Instead of just throwing something out there and be like, well, it worked for me this one time, so now I'm going to go on Instagram and share it with hundreds and thousands of people and say, this is the way. We need to actually understand the brain chemistry and what's going on. And I think there's enough research out there and people are hungry enough for like real, actionable, science-based tools, and they can handle it, that this type of work is so fun. So that is my passion, is really small things. And some of them that I think I could share that have been my favorite, that have been recent research that has come out, I'm a big fan of this idea of micro moments. I think that if I read another like 15-step morning routine, I just can't. I mean, bless the people that can do it. There's no judgment. Like, that's amazing. But like, oftentimes I think those things can make the rest of us feel like this sense of, I'm never going to be able to do that. I don't have the time. I'm not good enough. There's a lot of shame. There's guilt. Like, how do these people have so much more time than me? Maybe they do. And so I'm passionate about like that type of real optimism for real people, that are more everyday, living everyday lives.
Yeah.
And for me, I feel like I've lived kind of both. Before I had children, this is my work. And so I tried everything. Mm-hmm. There were practices I had that I had so much time for, like really long meditative practices, going on retreats. Like, the world was my oyster to kind of like put into self-care. And then I had children, and I actually had a really hard experience when I had my first son for many, many reasons. But one of them, right when I gave birth, right after, I realized that I really didn't have much time for anything. And so my way, I was very all or nothing. If I didn't have time, it's kind of like I like to use the example of like, if I didn't have time to read a chapter, I wasn't going to read a page.
Right.
So it was the same thing, like all the practices that I did that would sort of lower my stress cortisol levels and sort of keep me going, I didn't have time for. And so I did nothing. And that was obviously not a great idea. And I just remember, so for me, body work and massage is not like an indulgence. That is how I lower my stress cortisol levels. And that is what gets me through. It was what got me through grad school. I hold a lot of like tension in my body. I'm very somatic. And I think a lot of women are. And the work that I was doing, I was a psycho-oncologist, intern and fellow at UCLA for a really long time. So all my patients were either had a cancer diagnosis or it was their family members. And that was, especially when I shared, I'm a very feeling person. That was a lot to come home with. And so the things that helped me be a better clinician at that time, and now I know, be a better mom or a friend, it really boiled down for me to like body work and being able to put myself in like a session or a situation that like would relax me and actually work through my muscles where I held all my tension. And so when I had my first child, I didn't have time for that. I was breastfeeding. There was just a lot going on. I was recovering from an emergency C-section. I took a really long time to recover, and I didn't do anything, and things got bad. And I remember I was strolling my son early on, like we went for a walk to run a couple errands, and I like walked past a nail salon. And, it said like $1 a minute for a massage. And I would have never done that. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try this out. I have 5 minutes before his next feed, and we have 10 minutes before we get home. So let me just try this. I literally took him, and I was in one of those chairs where they put you like face down, just like right in the entry. Yeah. And I was like, strolling him back and forth to like keep him calm. And he was like, a little sleepy. And I got a massage for 5 minutes, and it honestly shifted my entire day. And I realized from that point, it's such a small thing, but I realized there is like no small amount of time, like no time is too small to do an act of self-care. And especially this idea, and I started really researching it, and there's a lot of science behind this idea of stealing many micro moments throughout your day rather than sort of having like your, I can't make it to the 3 times a week to this like, hour and a half long yoga class, or what actually is more effective in our everyday lives and the kind of lives that we're living in this modern world is to have many multiple micro moments. And so that's a big hack for me. I really make my micro moments count, and I steal time. And what you can do with those to like further it is, some of my favorite things are, number one, being out in nature. And it doesn't have to be like in the middle of the redwood forest. Right. It can literally just be being outdoors wherever you are. Research has shown 2 hours on average a week. That's it. That's all we need to lower stress cortisol levels and to increase and improve our mood. Also, another piece with that is if you can get sunlight, speaking of sunlight, if you can get sunlight in before 10 a.m., and many people do, but that's kind of key for the remainder of your day to boost happiness. So making sure you get some sunlight before 10 a.m. is a big thing. Yeah, movement is always something that I think a lot, it's kind of a no-brainer. People know that. I actually, knowing that, am not great at movement. Mm-hmm. I can be prone to very sedentary, like I am not good at working out. It's not what brings me joy. I wish it was. And I need to start, like, it actually just has to be like work and medicine for me now. Like, I have to take it as medicine because it's time to start like lifting weights. And like, I'm at that age where we don't really build muscle on our own anymore. And so, but I will say something that I love and that really counts is I love music. I always have. It is like, music is like my drug. If there's music on, it just can boost my mood or it can take me somewhere really emo. Like music just gets me. And I love moving to music. And so I do this thing every morning. It's my little hack and everyone has their own. And it's called Wake Up and Dance. But there's been a lot of research done recently on this idea of micro movement. So like getting up and like having a burst of a micro movement, whether it's like shaking out or stretching or doing jumping jacks or dancing to a song, 3 minutes. That's it. Just a micro movement. There's like a huge boost in dopamine and it's really, really impactful and effective. I think the last one I would probably share, another micro moment, but putting yourself throughout the day, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, through a micro moment, 60 seconds of awe. So finding things that bring you to a feeling or an experience of awe. So that could be, when you feel like the world is really big and you feel like you're just this small part of it. And it could be when you're listening to a beautiful piece of music, a composition, or looking at a piece of art, or being in nature, whatever it is. I tend to help my clients use sort of the digital world and technology for them instead of allowing it to use itself against you. And one of the ways I do that is I think Pinterest is such a great tool for collecting images that actually put you in a state of awe. So I have like an awe folder on my phone. That's just images I collect. Like that's how I like to utilize Instagram, is like saving images that like make me feel like inspired and in awe. And a lot of times it's nature, it's places I want to visit, or it's something beautiful aesthetically. There are so many beautiful small things that you can do throughout your day, which I'm really passionate about, that will actually shift your life in a lasting way. And I think that's what's important. This isn't about a quick fix. It isn't about a trend. It's about living your life more authentically and optimally.
Yeah, I love that. Do you find that social media has made people more pessimistic versus optimistic?
Yeah. I think that's pretty like across the board. I also think the caveat there is how you're using it. Mm-hmm. So we see that a lot more in people that are using it passively. So people that are like sort of doom scrolling or just kind of looking, they're look-see-loos, they're looking, they're scrolling, but they're not actively on it. So we see that more with that. People that aren't really sharing and they're not in the community of it and sharing their experience, but they're just kind of voyeuristically watching.
Interesting, which is probably most people, because not everyone's a content creator.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean that content creators are free from that. I think there's a whole nother, there's so many aspects of social media that are just not good for us. Like humans were not made, our brains were not made to experience social media and the way in which we experience it. And I can say, even knowing all that and having the tools, I am on it and on my phone far too much for any sort of healthy like aspect. I have my kids remind me and I will give them the responsibility. Like I try so hard. We spend so much time in our cars here in LA.
Yep.
And it is obviously it's a dangerous thing to be on your phone in your car, but we are so programmed. Our brain has this neural pathway now. It's literally like, it's like an addiction. It's the dopamine hit. And whenever there's like a lull, like even just a red light or a stop, like most people, including myself, like the thing to do is you just pick it up and you don't even know you're picking it up. And so I most of the time have my kids in the car and I don't want to be that parent. I don't want to be that driver, but it's really hard because it feels like an automatic response that I'm not in control of. I literally have tasked my 7-year-old to like call me out. And honestly, it's embarrassing to me. And I also don't want him to think that I don't know what, when he turns 16 or 17, whenever they're driving, I don't know what's going to be, things are going so fast, what will be available then or how quickly, I don't know if there's going to be like phone in the, in the windshield, but whatever it is, I don't want him to think that even though I'm being a safe driver or he trusts me, that like picking it up for a second is okay. So what we know about, parenting, you can read all the parenting books, you can follow all the parenting people. But in the end of the day, like you can come up with the perfect thing to say to your child in that moment. The way they learn is modeling. Mm-hmm. And so I talk a lot, I have my eldest is only 7. Well, he's about to be 8. But, the future for us is definitely going to be them asking for phones and social media. And it's not yet in mine, but I have heard of other friends, other places where the 7-year-olds are using like they're making like TikToks and stuff.
Totally.
And so people always ask me, even in practice, like, what can we do? Like, should we all sign like a contract for our kids and all? And I'm like, honestly, the number one, like most potent thing you can do is figure out how much time you're spending on your phone in front of them, because that's where they're learning it from. And it's hard for me. It's a hard truth for me to bear because I feel like I have all the right things to say to him, but like, what am I doing in front of him and on automatic? So it's really about being more mindful in social media usage. I don't think it's all bad. I think even this is amazing. I'm probably connected to you through that.
Absolutely.
And I've made real friends through it. And I've kept in touch with people through it, which has actually increased my social connection, which we know is a really big pillar in happiness and optimism. But it all boils down to like, how are you using it? And is it using you?
You talk a lot about sensory visualization. Mm-hmm. Can you explain what that is?
Yes. Have you ever been to like a yoga class or a meditation or some sort of experience where they have like asked you to close your eyes and put you through a visualization?
Yes, okay. Absolutely.
So that's kind of what this is, except what I think most of us have been through. It's kind of become more widespread, this idea of like going in, visualizing something in your mind and sort of being transported, whether it is, imagining a scenario you want or going somewhere that is for the sole purpose of relaxation. Whatever it is, I think all of us are familiar with it. But what a lot of people don't know is there's real science behind it and how to do it. And so I love visual imagery. The way I came across it and sort of became really focused on the research behind it is when I was doing my dissertation on optimism, one of the best ways that we know from a science-based perspective to increase our future directed thoughts in a more positive way, or expect better, or expect that things will happen in a way that we want. One of the things we have to do is sort of dismantle self-limiting beliefs, right? That kind of like, we can only expect something good to happen if we believe it's possible. And we can only believe it's possible if we have a belief that it is. And so if you're holding this belief that, if what you really want is this, beautiful, secure, loving relationship, but through your experience, you hold this belief that, you are not lovable, then it's very unlikely that you will probably attract or bring in, from your own brain perspective, a relationship if you believe that you're unlovable and that it's not going to happen for you, even if you really want it. And so a lot of people will be like, well, how can I get from that? How can I close that gap of the want and expectation like we talked about? And there are many different ways, and that takes work and it takes time. But one of the quickest ways is actually to develop a sensory-based visual imagery practice, which just basically means visualizing something so that you feel, when your brain visualizes something, it doesn't actually know the difference between what is visualized and what is real, because of these things we have called mirror neurons. And so when you close your eyes and you visualize something and you use all of your senses to make it as real and authentic as possible, your brain actually doesn't know the difference, that you didn't just experience that versus like you visualized it. And so we are more able to believe something to be true once we've seen it. And so this idea of practicing visual imagery, and there's a science behind, sometimes it's more effective to use the third person, like seeing yourself on stage, kind of that thing, like seeing yourself, your body doing something. And other times in other scenarios, based on what we're visualizing, it makes more sense to go from the first person. So like almost like seeing yourself from like a video game perspective, like you're seeing from the mind's eye. And so there's tons of science on that. There's science on like when to use color and what type of color. I'm really interested in that and always bring that in to my visual imagery.
Can this optimism be used almost in ways that are like maybe even like medical, like you were saying that like before surgery.
Yeah.
But I think about, I'm at this age where my friends who are a little bit later starting their families, they're going through IVF or like egg freezing, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Can you put yourself in this mentality where you have a better chance at least of maybe conceiving or having healthy eggs or something?
Listen, none of this stuff is about controlling the outcome. That's what we got to be clear with. And that's where I think things can get dicey. And when you're like trying to believe that you have control over the outcome of every situation, and you're like, well, I visualized it and so I manifested it. And then you might do that 1 or 2 times and you think that that is this real practice now. And then it doesn't work and you're shattered and you like lose this idea of faith in it. And I think that is a really important concept. The way this stuff works, and it works the best with the way our brain works, is that you get specific in sort of the experience, but you do not get specific in the outcome. Like this is not a design for like control. And I think a lot of people, of course, all of us feel so helpless in life when we are out of control. That is a universal humanity thing. Change is hard and being out of control is hard for all of us. There are no hacks for that. There are small places in your life every day where you do have control. And the hack is to really dive into those and lean into those small areas that you have control over, and develop a practice where you are comfortable with the unknown, because that is what will carry you through life. But I will say with the trying to conceive piece, it's something that really upsets me when I read this. But basically, I did IVF for my younger two. But we didn't for my older one. I didn't know I had to. I couldn't carry again. You never know what someone's going through, first of all. It wasn't a conception thing for me. It was physically I couldn't carry after my first. So we had to go through that IVF process to get the eggs out. But something that bothers me, but at the same time I get and I understand, and there is an optimistic way to look at it that I read, is that people always say the research shows that you have the best egg quality or the best chances trying to conceive when you are relaxed.
Right.
Well, try telling that to a couple or a woman or a man, whatever it is. Try telling that to someone that's had a hard time having a child. Like you couldn't be less relaxed. And then like on top of it, when you are going through the process, like there's nothing relaxing about multiple shots in your stomach or putting vaginal suppositories in or a huge needle like in your backside and getting ultrasounds, every day or blood tests. There's nothing relaxing about that. But what I will say is that where this can help, you can take those micro moments, you can do 5-minute sessions where you are in a period of relaxation. And one of the best ways we know how to do that is to shut out the outside world and to go in. And a lot of times I feel like a visual imagery practice is sort of a really nice complement or an alternative to sort of a meditative practice, where I'm someone that's brain is always thinking. So I'm prone to anxiety. I don't have clinical anxiety, but I definitely am prone to it. And when I had my kids, my anxiety like definitely increased. I worry a lot and my brain's always constantly going. I used to think of when people would say, start a meditative practice of just emptying your mind. And that did not work for me. It was kind of like when you have a purse and you stuff it to the brim and someone is just like, why don't you buy a bigger purse? So you have some space. Well, if I bought a bigger purse, I would just be like, well, there's more space to put more stuff in.
Same.
And I feel like my brain is like that. And so what I found with visual imagery, or like a more sort of intentional, focused meditative practice where you're actually using all of your attentional capacity, I find that that is very helpful for me to put myself through an actual prompt, an actionable prompt, where you're doing something. You're not like clearing your mind, but you are telling your mind what to think. And it is using enough attentional capacity. Our brains don't have unlimited attentional capacity. You're using enough attentional capacity where it can't worry because it is already being used up for something else. And so even looking at a practice like that in a time like trying to conceive and putting all of your efforts into visualizing what you want, it may not change the outcome, but actually it may actually change your biology in that moment, which might change the outcome. And that's sort of the secret.
Before we wrap this up, is there at least like one thing that you would want a person listening or watching to take away from this conversation?
Okay. One is sort of a tool another tool that I want to throw out that's really interesting. And one is something we may have all heard of, but really listen to it, is the first step to any practice of growth at all is self-compassion. Like that's the first step. You really can't do much if you're not being compassionate with yourself. Like you don't I always tell my clients, like there's nowhere to start for us if you're not like compassionate with yourself, because honestly, that's how the brain works. Like if you're worried about something and you're stressed about worrying about that thing, like we need to first let go of that and have empathy and understanding to ourselves of why, of course, we'd be worried about this thing. Then we can go and deal with the thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The tool is fascinating research. One of my favorite things to come out of this very long study that was done recently on happiness is that human connection, social connection, like we talk about, is the number one pillar and key to really show the factor to show whether you will be happy in life. And to follow up on that, this research study was done, which I thought was so brilliant and so cool. One conversation a day with someone that you feel like familial with, or you could be vulnerable with, or you feel joy from, like a friend, just one short conversation a day. It can be a few minutes, a check-in. It's always best in person, but phone is fine. That's better than something more virtual, or a text, like a phone call, hearing someone's voice, or being in person. Small conversation a day actually is super effective.
So can this be with like a partner relationship, that kind of thing, or a bestie?
Yeah, great. Awesome if it's with the bestie. I think it's amazing if you have a partner to do that with, but it would be effective to have someone that you don't, like, not that you see every day, that you also have transaction, like just one meaningful friendship conversation with someone, one interaction that's short. Check in with a friend, just call to say hi. I saw this last night. My husband showed me, I'm not really on TikTok, but he's actually someone that's passively on TikTok that I think it actually works for him in a way that brings him joy because he watches funny things. Mm-hmm. But he showed me, and this is like not even related, but it was so funny. We were like, our stomachs hurt from laughing so much last night, which is a great way to go to bed. But he showed me this trend of men, I don't know if you've seen it, calling other men to say, I just called to say goodnight.
Good night, like they did when they were younger? Yes, I love this.
They call, like grown men were calling other grown men just to be like, hey, dude, like, what's going on? I just wanted to call and say goodnight. And it was like so hilarious because the people on the other end were so like caught off guard. Some people got mad. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, and some people were like, are you okay? Like, it was really funny, but let's normalize guys calling our friends just to say goodnight.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. I think that's what made that trend so funny was that guys women were a little bit more open to calling up our friend when we really need to, especially, and like saying I love you and showing that like,
and
that
even just
care.
calling because like I have like a couple of girlfriends that I literally call like when I'm driving. Yeah. Just to say hi and catch up and even to say goodnight. Like I do that. Like I'm like, this is not weird for me. Yeah. And they're not my partner. It's like my best girlfriends, or like we'll be at, we'll see each other and right after leaving, we get in our cars and we'll call each other on our way home because we're not done yet. Mm-hmm. But it's true. Like, I think that's such a funny thing. And I always feel, it's not often, but when I get into the house and for some reason I like catch my husband on the phone with one of his friends and they're just talking, it makes me feel like so good. Yeah. Like, I feel like that is a healthy thing. And I'm happy that he has that in his friends. And he's like open to doing that.
Yeah, because it makes everything healthy in your life then.
It does. And it's a really strong predictor of longevity and happiness. And obviously we want the people we care and love to live a long time and to be happy. Yeah. So tell them to call a friend and say goodnight.
I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Chopra. This was a fascinating conversation. I could talk to you all day long.
Me too. And I have like a million questions for you about other stuff, but I'll go offline on that.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm here for you.
Like your skin.
Oh, thank you.
It's so beautiful.
Thank you. I think about having beautiful skin every single day.
Yeah, I know. And I need to ask you about that.
Yeah, well, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Glowlab. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you follow, rate, and also share it with a friend because we want to keep this show going. I'll talk to you next time.